It happened in the middle of a Saturday market in Brookside, the kind of day when the sun sits high in stubborn painting every stall and awning in sharp, unforgiving light. You could smell roasted peanuts from one end, fresh cilantro from the other, and somewhere in between, a radio played an old blues tune just loud enough to weave through the noise of bargaining voices. I was standing by the coffee cart when I saw him. Officer Darrell Henson cutting through the crowd like he owned it, boots hitting the pavement, in that slow, deliberate way that says, "Move or I'll make you." He didn't look left or right, just straight ahead toward a fruit stand run by Elijah Moore. Elijah's been selling here for over 30 years. Everyone knows him. His hands have that permanent, gentle curve from years of arranging oranges and grapes into neat, perfect pyramids. He's the kind of man who'll slip an extra mango in your bag if you're short on cash. Darrell didn't say hello, didn't ask a question. He just shoved him. Hard. The cart rocked, then tipped, and in an instant, fruit was everywhere, bananas rolling under tables, grapes spilling into the gutter. One bright orange, tracing a slow, lonely path until it bumped the curb. The sound of it hitting the concrete felt louder than the crowd itself. "You're ruining the city's image," Darrell said, like it was gospel. His voice had that flat, dismissive tone that made it clear he'd said this before to someone else. Probably a lot of someone's. Elijah didn't argue. He just stood there still as stone hands twitching like he wanted to pick up the fruit, but knew better. Around us, people froze in that uneasy way like when you see a storm rolling in and you can't decide if you've got time to run for cover. A woman near me half raised her phone, then lowered it again when Darrell's gaze swept over the crowd. Then Darrell grabbed Elijah's shirt, yanking him close enough their noses almost touched. "People like you do not belong here," he said. Not loud, but sharp enough to cut the air between them. Elijah's jaw clenched, but he stayed silent. And that silence wasn't weakness. It was the kind of silence that comes from years of knowing the wrong word could cost you more than you're willing to pay. "Pick it up," Darrell ordered, nodding at the mess on the ground. Elijah didn't move. I said, "Pick it up." Still nothing. Just that stubborn set of his shoulders. That's when I felt it, the shift. The crowd wasn't silent because they were scared anymore. They were waiting, and I realized I was waiting too, though I didn't know for what until I saw him. He stepped out of the cafe like the scene had been waiting for him. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal suit that looked out of place in a market, but somehow didn't. He set his coffee down on the table without looking away from Darrell. The crowd noticed him all at once, and people stepped aside without a word. "Let him go," he said, calm, flat, like there was no other option. Darrell gave this short, mocking laugh. "This doesn't concern you." He tugged Elijah forward another inch like he wanted to prove a point. The man in the suit didn't flinch, just tilted his head a little like he'd seen this scene before and knew exactly how it ended. And then in one smooth motion, he closed the distance, grabbed Darrell by the collar, pivoted his weight, and crack drove his face straight into the steel lamppost beside them. The sound was metallic, final. Darrell dropped to his knees, one hand flying to his forehead, blood already seeping between his fingers. The man in the suit let him fall, adjusted his jacket, and reached into his pocket. Out came a worn leather badge wallet. He flipped it open so everyone could see. "Special Inspector Marcus Lane, United States Department of Justice." No one clapped. No one cheered. But the air in the market changed. It felt lighter even as adrenaline still hummed under our skin. Marcus looked at two bystanders with phones out. "Call Internal Affairs. Tell them to send a team now." And just like that, people started moving again. Not away toward. Phones came out, voices rose, and one by one, folks began telling their stories. Not just about today, but about every time Darrell had shaken them down, humiliated them, fined them for things no one else got fined for. A woman in a green headscarf talked about being told to move her flower cart because it didn't fit the neighborhood image. A fish vendor said Darrell threatened to shut him down unless he paid cash on the spot. Marcus wrote it all down, flipping pages in a small notebook, like each word was a brick in a wall he was building in around this man. By the time internal affairs arrived, the market felt united in a way I'd never seen. Elijah stood by his cart, his shirt still rumpled from Daryl's grip, but his back was straighter. He wasn't alone anymore. The case didn't fade into paperwork. Marcus made sure of that. He brought every statement, every video, every old complaint into the precinct and dropped it like a weight on the captain's desk. These aren't complaints, he said. They're patterns. A month later, I sat in the back of the courtroom, watching it all come together. The prosecutor's voice was steady as they laid out the charges. Assault misconduct under color of law. Marcus testified first methodical and clear, dismantling every attempt the defense made to spin the story. Elijah went next, telling it plain, his voice low, but carrying. Then came the others, the green headscarf, the fish vendor, even a teenager who'd been shoved for helping his uncle. Daryl sat at the defense table in a suit that didn't make him look any smaller, but the set of his jaw had changed. Less smug, more cornered. When the verdict came guilty on all counts, there wasn't applause. Just this ripple of breath through the room, like people were exhaling for the first time in years. The sentence wasn't dramatic, prison time, permanent loss of his badge, but it was enough to draw a line in the sand. The next Saturday, I walked through Brookside Market and saw a new sign posted at the entrance, vendor area protected by city ordinance. Beneath it, smaller print outlining rights that had always existed on paper but had never been enforced. People stopped to read it, touching the words like they were testing if they were real. Elijah was back in his spot, arranging mangoes into that perfect pyramid again. When Marcus showed up in plain clothes, they talked like old friends about fruit prices, about the weather, about nothing and everything. "How's it been?" Marcus asked. "Different," Elijah said, glancing at the sign. "People talk to me more now. No one's tried to move me along." Marcus nodded. "Sometimes it starts with just one visible change. From there, it's harder to pretend that the old way was right." They shook hands, and Marcus moved on, disappearing into the crowd like he'd just been another customer. But I know better. We all do. Because in this market on that day, the balance shifted. And maybe it's still fragile, maybe there's still work to do, but Elijah's still standing at his cart, and Daryl Henson will never walk through here in uniform again. So here's what I keep thinking about. Was it justice because a man with authority stepped in? Or should justice have already been there without him? If Marcus hadn't been sipping coffee at that cafe, would we all have just watched heads down like so many times before, you tell me? Was this a victory or just a glimpse of what we should expect every time? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this isn't just Elijah's story, it's ours too.